If you have a question, please feel free to *9 to raise your hand or *6 to ask a question. And there will be a formal Q&A at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and start introducing some of the people, or some of the presenters, and also myself. My name is Ayana Simba. I am the Clean Water Advocate at the Illinois Environmental Council. A lot of my work oversees our water policy, advocacy, and community engagement around water issues. So today I'm really excited for this water quality webinar because I don't have as much experience and knowledge in water quality issues. So today we're going to have Elena Harkness, the Executive Director at Current, Svetlana Taylor, the Technical Program Director at Current, and George Burgundy, the Partnership and Development Director and Manager at Current present. And they'll go ahead and do some intros and talk a little bit more about what Current is and what they do to protect our water. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to Elena.
Great, thanks so much. I'm gonna go ahead and start my screen share for you. Great to see everybody. Let's see, can you all see? No, it's good. Great, so I'm here today to give a little bit of an overview, as Yana said, about what Current is and how we operate, and then one of our flagship projects, which we're really excited about. It's called H2NOW Chicago, and the focus is on helping us get to real-time water quality monitoring in our urban waterways. Great. So first, I just want to share a little bit about Current, my organization, and the team that you're seeing here. Current is a water cluster or water innovation hub. So we're a small nonprofit, and our mission is really to grow the blue economy in Chicago and Illinois. And so what we mean by the blue economy is a very broad group of companies, of innovators, of utilities, end users, people who are building the kinds of technologies that can solve not only our challenges locally, but the world's challenges in water. Chicago is a global city. We have a globally relevant economy and a very diverse economy. And we have a ton of advantages that really position us to be world leaders in water. And we think that's a really exciting proposition, both for the economy here, but also for the environment. So we're a young nonprofit. We've been only around since 2016, and we are small. You're looking at the full-time staff, all three of us right here. We have interns and a ton of partners. So I always stress that Current is kind of first and foremost a collaborative that is powered by partnerships. We have an incredible board and advisors. You can see some of our partners if you go to our website, currentwater.org. But basically, we exist to try to bring together all of these different connected and talented stakeholders that we have here in Chicago and in Illinois to achieve this goal of building the blue economy. Oops. So I just want to go a little bit deeper in what we mean by the blue economy. So broadly, we think about this as connecting the users at the top that have some kind of demand for innovative technology in water. So it could be a food and beverage company that's really interested in reducing the cost of the water that they use to produce their food and beverage. It could be the utilities. This is what I think a lot of us think of as the water cluster. So Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, the City of Chicago Water Department. It's where we get our drinking water, and it's how we treat and manage our storm and wastewater. But it's also, companies that are building housing and office spaces that are thinking about how to manage the needs of their users and residents. It's transportation, it's energy companies broadly. There's a huge array of industry types and users across on the demand side that all have a need for innovative water technology. And on the bottom are the people that we think of as the suppliers of that innovative tech. And here in Illinois, we're really blessed to have a lot of Tier 1 research universities, research centers, national centers like Argonne that are doing cutting edge research on and trying to develop new water technologies. We also have entrepreneurs that are building businesses that are connecting some of that cutting edge tech to real world applications. There are investors that are really interested in growing a pipeline of companies to grow and expand and make money eventually. And then there are incubators who are interested in being part of the ecosystem and sort of growing the pipeline of innovative technology companies. So Current really sits between and across those different supply and demand sides of water in our region, and we try to exist to fill some of the gaps between them, because water is a really complicated set of industries and sectors. And we think to really achieve this goal of building a blue economy, there's a lot of gap filling to do and a lot of strategic programming work that we can do to make it happen more effectively. All right, so our goal in the end, we'd love to see Illinois be a globally recognized hub of water technology. And we talk about sort of 5 pillars of our work that help lead to making that happen. Pillar 1 is actually deploying technology in the real world to solve especially local and regional water needs. So we focus on solving problems locally, because to actually demonstrate technology in the real world takes a lot of resources, it takes a lot of partners, and it takes really focused attention and effort. You're going to hear about one of those projects today, and you'll hear us talk through some of the stages in that process. Pillar 2 is exporting those technologies and solutions beyond our region. So the technology and innovation that we produce here in Illinois and in Chicago can be relevant to users all over the world. So everybody everywhere is grappling with how to manage their water, whether it's scarcity or abundance, cleanliness. There's common water challenges that are only deepening everywhere around the world. Pillar 3 is thinking about how we build a pipeline of a skilled and diverse workforce. So we're thinking a lot about the job side, especially now, actually, as we shift to a moment where we're thinking a lot about what it means to rebuild our economy and kind of bounce back from the shock we're in right now. So a lot of our time and effort is going to be focused on thinking about how we get people excited about water as a pillar of our economy and how we build a pipeline of talented workers. Pillar 4 for us is the governing and regulatory bodies that support innovation in water. And so this actually intersects a lot with the work that IEC leads, and really is very important to us as a sort of partner to IEC. We're thinking a lot about incentives for innovation, how states and localities put money behind innovation in water, and what we can do to sort of kickstart that and help create smarter incentives. And then finally, the pillar that's about building a thriving ecosystem really goes back to that supply-demand connection on the previous slide. But we do a lot of work that is just designed to bring the supply-demand sides together and to bring people together to kind of come up with crisper definitions of problems in water and really start to solve those together. So we do a lot of events and convenings and a lot of sort of strategic gatherings where we want to identify some of the top needs locally or globally, and then start to figure out what it is specifically that we as Current can do to help meet those needs. So today, we're just going to be really focused over here in the first pillar on tech deployment to solve local and regional water needs. And the project I'm going to talk about, our team's going to talk about, is called H2NOW Chicago. It is a waterway monitoring project, and our tagline, our very long tagline, is we think it is still the first near real-time water quality monitoring project in the US that's measuring microbial pollutants. And I'll get into all the pieces of that as we go on. But first, I just want to give you a sense of sort of what the problem statement was. So here is something that I hope we can all be enjoying again very, very soon together. Kayaking on a beautiful day in Chicago summer. So I don't know, I can't see all of your hands, but I usually do sort of a show of hands to see if you've been out kayaking on the river multiple times. You'll notice that there are some days that are better and there are some days that are worse. Some days the water kind of looks and feels great. Other days you can actually sort of feel that it might be dirtier. Like it either doesn't smell as great, it doesn't look as great. There's a lot of ways to sort of observe just by being near the water that its quality is fluctuating. So if you're trying to make a decision about kayaking, and you know as a Chicagoan that your water quality is changing, now or sort of previously, the best you could do is actually go and take a sample of the water if you really want to understand what's in it. You have to get it tested, which takes a couple of days. And then you get your answer, is it a good day to kayak? Except by now, it's not Saturday, it's not sunny, it's Monday, you're back at work, and it doesn't matter anymore, right? So real-time water quality monitoring is really important if we're interested in trying to figure out how to boost our urban waterways' ability to be used for recreation, to be used for economic development, and also, of course, to have, first and foremost, to be safe aquatic environments, right? So this is really what we're dealing with and the problem that H2NOW Chicago was designed to solve. So if you want to QR code your camera at the screen, this will take you to h2nowchicago.org, which is our static website for H2NOW, where you can learn a lot about the background of the project. But in general, the goals are to get to real-time water quality monitoring, to share with the public what it means to improve the river health and water quality and what has happened over time. So that website actually has a lot of historical information about the river, what it meant to sort of reverse the river, why we reversed the river, what MWRD and others are doing to treat the storm and wastewater that ends up in the river when it does, why that happens. And then, you know, the ultimate goal for us with H2NOW is to actually observe in real time how the river quality is changing over time in response to these changing conditions. And finally, this is where the sort of demonstration part of Current's work comes in. We're evaluating technologies that are pretty new. So the reason that more cities aren't doing real-time water quality monitoring is because the technology hasn't existed, and it hasn't existed at a scale and an ease of use that has made it easy for cities everywhere to just, you know, flip a switch and say, yeah, we know, you know, as conditions change, exactly what that means for our urban waterways. And we just haven't gotten there yet. So part of what we're seeking to do is demonstrate that technology. So some of you may be familiar with the Great Rivers Chicago Plan. And we always point to this because it was really helpful in kickstarting support for H2NOW Chicago, because this comprehensive plan named real-time water quality information as a 2020 goal. So this really kickstarted Current's leadership as a water tech organization to say, hey, real-time water quality information, that's something that we can help with. So we raised our hand as part of this broader collaborative to say, we'll evaluate the technology, we'll build a program framework, and we'll figure out how to work towards launching real-time water quality in Chicago. But this Great Rivers Chicago framework, I always love to point back to because it gives you a more comprehensive picture of why river quality matters. It's really framed as utilizing our urban waterways as you know, safe, enjoyable, recreational waterways that everybody across our city can use. They're really important connective tissue, right? They connect, even just looking at the branches of the Chicago River, they connect our neighborhoods. They are these vital waterways and these vital pathways, and being able to improve their quality and bring them into productive use is something that we care about deeply at Current, but also really that's something that's shared not only with the broader environmental community, but with neighborhood development organizations and residents. And so we're just really excited about the potential that this one small water quality project has to unleash this broader set of activities, all framed at, you know, vibrant recreational use and economic development with our rivers. This is also relevant globally. So these are some of the Sustainable Development Goals that the UN has put out for 2030. So the Great Rivers Plan, as I said, had 2020 milestones. It also has 2030 milestones. These are some of the milestones that Current keeps, or the global goals that Current keeps in mind that are relevant to our work. And so H2NOW Chicago really ties into several of them. The Goal 6 around clean water and sanitation for the world. Goal 11, which is about thriving and vital cities and communities, and Goal 14, which is concerning all of the sort of thriving aquatic environments and life below water. Okay, so phase one of our work, which we're going to go into more detail in a minute, I just want to get you situated in terms of the geography. So you're all probably familiar with the branches of the Chicago River, but the first thing for us as we thought about how we would develop a program framework was, how do we get to comprehensive water monitoring? So the branches of the river are variable. The water quality is also variable. It changes from place to place. And so the first thing we knew we needed to do was make sure that we were monitoring quality at each of these branches. And so these dots represent very broadly places where we are actually doing this sensing and monitoring work. And I am now going to turn it over to Svetlana Taylor, who leads all of our technical and engineering work at Current. And she's going to talk you through the technical weeds of the project, which is really exciting because it shows you the novel technologies that we're actually testing in real time that we've gotten like we're actually kicking the tires on as starting in 2019. So Svetlana, you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you, Elena. So the slide you're seeing right now shows different partners that are engaged in this project, and each of them are doing an important part of the project. And I'll talk about them in more detail on a subsequent slide. We can go to the next.
Oh, sorry, I forgot I was driving. Yeah.
All right, so first of all, before I talk about the technologies, I wanted to talk a little bit about why are we measuring fecal coliform. So we're measuring microbial pollution, and we're measuring this group of thermotolerant bacteria that are called fecal coliform. This group of bacteria survives at higher temperatures comparable to those in the gut of warm-blooded animals, and their presence in the environment indicates contamination by sewage or by animal feces. So it's not exactly a lunch topic. Sewage may contain pathogens, and the pathogens are what makes people sick. But to identify all the pathogens individually is impractical with current methods, just because there are so many of them, and they're different. So the approach has been to assess the likelihood of the pathogen presence based on concentrations of other sewage-associated microorganisms, which are more easily detected, such as fecal coliform. This practice actually dates back to 1880s, and since then, multiple groups of microorganisms have been tested for their ability to predict the presence of human pathogens. Some common ones that I'm sure you're familiar with are E. coli and Enterococci. E. coli is considered a better indicator of human pathogens, but we're measuring fecal coliform. And why? The main reason is because Illinois Environmental Protection Agency has chosen fecal coliform as a metric for recreational use standards in the Chicago River. And since our project has to do with the Chicago River quality, we decided to use this metric. As you can see on the diagram in the slide, E. coli is actually a subset group of fecal coliform. One freshwater study I was just reading yesterday found that there are approximately 800 E. coli units to 1,000 fecal coliform units. In Lake Michigan beaches, E. coli is being measured, and the standard is 325 CFUs per 100 milliliters, which is the threshold for beach closing. The primary contact standard for the river is 200 CFUs per 100 milliliters of fecal coliform, but this is based on the mean, and any single test has to be below 400 CFUs per 100 milliliters. All right, so we can go next.
Great. So that's the deepest dive we'll do on poop over lunch. So sorry, guys. Great. Back to technology.
Yeah. So technologies. These are the two novel technologies that we're using. The important characteristic of any detection method that I have here on the top, these are accuracy, range, and speed. For the purposes of H2NOW, of course, speed is the defining factor because we want to be able to measure in real time. The Proteus probe that you're seeing on the top is very good at real-time detection, but it does not measure fecal coliform directly. So instead, it measures tryptophan, which is an amino acid produced by bacteria. And in natural water bodies, there are background tryptophan levels due to the non-fecal microorganisms. So for us to estimate fecal coliform concentrations, we need to conduct a number of parallel tests where we measure fecal coliforms directly, and then we use the results to develop a calibration for Proteus. So this has been a major undertaking for us last year, and it will be this year as well, as soon as we can get out to the river. So since Current does not have a lab or resources to conduct testing with traditional lab methods, we decided to use another technology for the direct measurement of fecal coliform, and this is the one that you're seeing on the bottom, Tecta B4. It's actually a Tecta B16. We're using a little smaller machine, and that actually sits in our office. The Tecta incubates the samples at the required temperature and uses enzymatic reactions specific to fecal coliform to detect fecal coliform concentrations. So that's our tool to calibrate the proteus. Right, we can go next. Another important piece of real-time monitoring is data collection and transmission. So there are many ways that data can be transmitted, which are based on specific frequencies and protocols. I'm not going to go into that, but two of our probes are using cellular network, which is really common and reliable. And another one is testing a low-power wide area network, which is provided by Comcast. The advantage of this method is that it has very low power consumption, but it cannot transmit large amounts of data at one time. So we're testing to see how it performs for our purposes and supplementing it with cellular network as well. We can go to the next.
And it's really exciting to think about, I mean, all the different components of this. People don't often think of this as testing a cellular or different pieces of information technology, but it is. It's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a very important part of using data for any assessment is making sure, of course, that the data is reliable. And our partner, IOSITE, is helping us to validate the data before we use it for our assessment of microbial water quality. IOSITE is also going to be looking at other data from the river that we've been collecting and providing, such as dissolved oxygen, conductivity, rainfall, flow, combined sewer overflow, flows, and others. And they will be using that information to assess how various factors influence microbial concentrations in the river. Then our partner Green Diamond Solutions, they have been extremely helpful in guiding the whole process of data acquisition, visualization, and coordinating efforts between multiple stakeholders in this area. And also they designed our first version of the H2NOW website, which you saw. So this is the end of the technologies. I just wanted, I don't know if anybody from MWRD or the city are here. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank our partners, the utilities without whom we would not be able to do a lot of this work. They were helping to install the probes, and also last year we were using Tecta is actually provided by the city to us, so that's why we're able to use it. So thank you.
Absolutely, ditto that.
Okay, so this is, I guess, the next slide just shows what data we collected last year, and
sorry.
Yeah.
Here we
go to this. Mm-hmm. It shows those blue dash lines, that's the amount of rainfall, and the red ones is the combined sewer overflow events. And you can see how tryptophan levels, which that correspond to microbial concentrations, they peak during those events. So it's kind of interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all of this, just the broad goal is to understand if the technology is working as we expect to estimate the readings that would also correlate to what we know to be true in real time, which I know you'll talk more about calibration, but that's the upshot of this graph, is to be tracking in real time. Does it correlate with what we would expect to see? Oh, great.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll flip back to just talk a little bit about, thanks so much, Svetlana, and we'll have time to take questions about any of the technologies or any other aspects of this process at the end. But just to give you a sense of where we are, so the project timeline, we launched about a year ago, came up with this design that included all the technology Svetlana just shared, which I do want to underscore that it's really interesting that this is not all technology that was developed here in Illinois. This is technology we really sourced from all over the world, and it's really great to have this global technology partnership that we're testing here. But our interest as Current is to bring technology from wherever it is so that we're solving problems here locally as effectively as we can. So I just want that to be clear. We do care about growing companies here that are doing innovation themselves, but in terms of solving our challenges, we take advantage of the networks we're part of to identify novel technologies like that Proteus probe that Svetlana mentioned that comes out of the United Kingdom and our partners there, like our partners at IOSite who are in Israel. And that just really leads to this richer sense of possibility and what we have in a global community of learning for water technology. So just do want to stress that. So we launched our actual probes in the river in May 2019. We were calibrating them and looking at the real-time data all through the summer, successfully transmitting real-time data from all 3 probes, and then engaged a lot of our partners. Oop, keeps going back. Nope, sorry guys. Let's see, engaged a lot of partners to talk about how to build out the platform. So that was work we started doing in the fall as we launched the website, the static website to the public that everybody can see, and started really aggressively ramping up our pre-field survey to ask folks about, how do they think the river is now? How would they, change their opinion of the river if they were engaging with real-time data? So we'll talk more about that survey later, but basically all of last year was testing the tech, getting it into the field, and developing the program framework. So here we are in 2020, and the goals for phase 2 of the project are really focused on 5 key things. First, improving the availability of the data. So there's so much that goes into this, from having reliable power in the 3 probes to having reliable communication in that whole setup that Svetlana talked about. 2 is higher accuracy and precision. So this requires us to be out there in the field doing a lot more sampling and calibrating the technology to what we're finding with the real world samples. The third thing is figuring out how to understand and communicate about the data. We highlight the limitations here because we just really want to make sure people understand what it is we're measuring and how that fits into the much more broader and more complicated set of monitoring and quality work that's happening all the time, with MWRD and others who are involved in the sort of regulation and quality control of water in the river. This is one small piece of it. It's an important part, but we want to make sure the public understands that. Fourth thing is to streamline data collection and integration from a lot of other sources. So we've got this great H2NOW Chicago website. We think it's a really nice one-stop shop for people to go that are interested in water quality, but we've been talking to all these other stakeholders about other water quality sources and other measures and other information about the river so that we can build a more comprehensive picture. And so we're starting the work now to try to figure out how to bring that all together in one place and update that website so that it is a better place to kind of share this broader picture. And finally, we're engaging, we'll call it a volunteer network here, but it's really, I hope you got a sense of the very broad array of partners, public partners, private partners, community-led organizations, and also just interested individuals who are all engaged in the work of collecting river samples, improving our calibration accuracy, but they're also helping to spread the word about this project. We think this is something that is truly for all of our region to own and to be part of. Svetlana, I'll let you talk a bit more about the calibration, if you would, and because that's such a big focus of the work this spring, or would have been before.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Just real quick, as I mentioned, calibration is going to be a very important task for us this year as well. So last year we conducted multiple parallel tests with the help of MWRD and a third-party lab to adjust Tecta estimates to the specifically membrane filtration method, because that's the method used for fecal coliform assessment. So this year we have verified our Tecta calibration, and now the major focus of our efforts will be calibrating Proteus probes. We have already sent the probes to the UK this spring for the internal sensor calibration, so that's the first step, and we got them back, and we started doing initial sampling and testing for calibrating them to fecal coliform, but we were interrupted by the COVID-19 outbreak, and we'll continue as soon as we can get back in the field. And so just I want to thank the volunteers who helped us a lot last year, because once we developed our initial calibration, we also plan to conduct weekly sampling and use them to improve the calibration. So volunteers helped us to do that last year, and some of them are returning, willing again to work with us this year on that. So big thank you to our volunteers, and we'll be looking for more volunteers for that.
Yeah, great. I'm going to move quickly through the rest of this and turn it over to George, but I just want to say we have a huge array of partners. I know some of them are on this call. This is our version of thanking everybody by name, is getting everybody up here, but this would not be possible without the support of the Chicago Community Trust's Great Rivers program, which supported the first phase of this work to launch it. Comcast also providing critical support, but also the Current's core support comes from our utilities. So MWRD and the City of Chicago, and also our research partners, University of Illinois, Northwestern, and University of Chicago, who are not featured here as partners on this project, but are critical platform partners for Current and just allow us to do the work that we do. And this is really emblematic of the kinds of projects we build. They're projects that require more partners to pull off than anybody would do on their own. They're solving a problem that doesn't fall in any one jurisdiction. And they're demonstrating novel technology that really takes intensive time and effort to bring to scale into the field. And so we're really excited to talk about how all of those folks will be engaged in the work ahead, and also importantly, how we expand that. So I'm going to turn it over to George, who leads our partnership development work, to tell us about the exciting next steps to come and how you can all get engaged.
Hi, everyone. So what you're looking at right now is a screenshot of our placeholder gauges, or the tools that will communicate this near real-time data on our website in the near future. Just to give you a little history, we anticipated these would be streaming near real-time data sometime last year, but with novel technologies, you frequently encounter unexpected issues, so it was pushed back to this year. And with the now COVID-19 outbreak, has been further postponed. But we hope, fingers crossed, by the end of this year, you will be not necessarily looking at these gauges, but some sort of widget that will give you a strong sense of what the microbial pollution level is in the waterway. And so, as Elena and Svetlana both mentioned, we do have H2NOWChicago.org, which is live right now. So if you wanted to check that out on your phone or browser, pull it up. You'll find ample information on project background history, who's involved, like these partners, and why you should care. Like we've discussed to this point, we want to educate folks on what the history of the river has been. Many don't know that it has vastly improved over the last 40 years, and even more so over the last 5. So water quality on most days is probably a lot better than you might anticipate. And we want to really drive more people to interact with the river and river-affiliated businesses and activities. We also want to communicate what are fecal coliforms, what is microbial pollution, why should you care, and also do that for the sake that the scope of this project is narrow, as it is a pilot project. We're just measuring those microbial pollutants. This is not going to indicate heavy metal pollution or microplastics or any other sort of contamination yet. We have we do hope to grow the scope beyond this initial effort, but right now it's just measuring fecal coliform. So, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to nod to Jeff Sheldon, who's been a really amazing volunteer coordinator and part of our advisory committee, is on the call and had asked, I see his chat request about the plans for expansion, phosphorus, or even COVID-19 monitoring. And I just wanted to nod to that now and say, we are very interested, and there's a big community of people across the country and even the world that are really interested in this broad topic of water quality monitoring. And there's lots of different kinds of sensors and lots of different kinds of technologies. So what we're actively interested in doing is understanding what some of those priorities would be, and then what we would need to do to add on technology into the probes that we already have to be able to complement that. But each time we add a different kind of, compound, or, in the case of COVID-19, there are countries all over the world scrambling to understand what would be meaningful about monitoring in the water. We're tracking all of that, and we're really interested to explore it. But yeah, it's important. The limits George is talking about are really important right now, and it's just important to make clear that yes, this platform is expandable with different resources, and with every new direction of expansion, it opens up the same kind of set of conversations about accuracy, what's the best in class, right? All of that. So yeah, it's a great question, and we're definitely tracking it. We'd love to continue to build this out.
To expand on that, the probes we have in right now, the Proteus probes, have actually 9 sensors on them, so they can measure many more water quality indicators than we're currently measuring. And just last thing on the website platform, so we're actually about to release an RFP to update this, as it's pretty soup to nuts, and we will be improving just its user experience, and we will be really focusing on this communication tool of that near real-time data, because I want to be clear, this is a transparency project really at its core. We will not be saying, yes, the water is safe to interact with. No, it's not. We want to inform you residents on what the level is and teach you why you should care, so you can then make a more informed and educated decision, maybe how and when you could interact with it. Because like we said, we think you will be surprised on most days on what that water quality is. And it fluctuates tremendously from branch to branch. And for any of you who don't know how many branches there are in the Chicago River, there are 3. So we can move to the next slide.
I don't know if you, okay, here we go. Great.
All right. So again, prior to COVID-19, we had quite a few public engagement projects in the work and events to help really launch and grow awareness around this project. Like Elena touched on earlier, we had community partners like Sierra Club, North River Commission, Urban Rivers, South Loop Chamber of Commerce, who all helped with water quality sampling, which was key at each of these locations, and helping calibrate the probes, and it still needs to occur to finalize that. With community surveying, we really want to understand what the impact of this project will be on Chicago's communities. This is a project for all of Chicago. We want to understand what the current perception is before this near real-time data goes live. And then once it is live, measure what the impact's been. Has that changed minds? Has it increased interaction with the river? And that kind of data, as that will really help us as we look to expand potentially elsewhere. And then just event-wise, we had several scientific or STEM-related events planned to really hone in on the scientific components of this, and more community service-based civic events. And it's really been pushed to later in the year or virtual. So I will say, stay tuned. Like everybody else, we are moving to the digital world. So you can expect a couple interactive webinar series from us in the coming months. But we hope to have this data shareable and something you can use and interact with within the summer.
Great. Thanks, George.
You got it.
Super helpful. Great. So I'm going to spin through this really quickly just to give a sense for how the coronavirus outbreak has affected this work. We've alluded to that. We were very actively launching phase 2 early this year. We made it through reinstalling the probes, and we had actually started our sampling process. So that was very exciting. We convened our advisors and our broader advisory committee meeting, and we were really rolling, and then of course had to stop sampling. So we're not going to make this goal of real-time data by Memorial Day. We are still hoping, so this is sort of like everyone else, we're living in the world of real-time updates, but we don't really have to be back to full business as usual to continue our sampling. We just have to be back to a world where a couple of people can go out at a time, run the sample, and safely, collect the data. So we're hoping that we'll be back to a world where we can actually do some of that in June and still hit this milestone of real-time data live by the end of July. that is a possibility. If that's the case, we will still figure out how to do limited events. As George said, this is a lot about figuring out what we can do with all of our partners. So just as everyone else has shifted to virtual, we'd be excited to do virtual events to talk about this and celebrate this and prepare for a time where we are back on the river with more regularity. So we'll see what that looks like, but this is sort of one possible scenario for our moving forward. The worst case, if you see the bottom has changed here, worst case, if we are not able to sort of be back out in the field, we are just pushing everything out a year. So we'll be back in the field then next spring. All of the usual caveats around weather and sampling season and everything would apply. So if we don't hit that sort of July deadline, then everything will be moving forward. There is moving forward again, just kind of picking up in 2021. So the continued deep work that we have to do right now. Kiana's on the line asking a great question that relates here. What are ways volunteers can stay engaged? So we're really going to be working on something that is a really difficult problem, and that is distilling complex information in the way that the public can find meaningful. So no matter what happens on the calibration side, we've got a good data set to work with. We've been engaging the teams that come to Shy Hack Night that are wonderful volunteers. They're helping us think through how we build this data out in a way that can visualize to the public. So as George said, we're going to be working on the interface of communication. So that's one way that volunteers can stay engaged. We're going to be scanning the horizon for other ways to build this out. So we're spending a lot of our time now tracking different efforts that are monitoring. We're trying to understand how virus transmission can be tracked in stormwater across the world. So there are projects in the Netherlands. There are projects underway with sewage sensing in Boston. We can share more of what we're learning, but this is a new area of research. Trying to understand viral transmission in water is not new, but how do we think about using it for coronavirus detection and monitoring? Someone's asked, yes. Anyway, so we'll be thinking about that. There's lots of ways to stay engaged, but we are committing to continue to do our advisory committee meetings virtually. We had a great, successful virtual meeting before, and we'll continue to do that. The next one will be weighing in on the sort of next version of the website. So that'll be an opportunity to kind of stay engaged, which will be very exciting. And then, so how you can engage. The survey is in the field right now, and the most important thing that everybody here could do is to share with your networks of folks in Chicago this very simple, 3 to 5 minute survey that just is helping us gauge a baseline for how people view the river right now with absent real-time water quality monitoring. So we're really trying to get up to 1,000 responses. That is going to be a really robust sample for us. And then we'll be able to go back after we've been in the field with our real-time water quality monitoring to actually understand how that's changed. And so this is a really important evaluation metric for us. So spread the word on that. The sampling will let you know when that can continue. Follow and promote the project. We will definitely share updates. Your organizations, if you're not already a part of the advisory committee, we're definitely open to having you join. And then we're always actively looking for partners and sponsors. So Current has to raise funds for this project. As I said, our first phase was supported not only by our core funders, but with specific project support from the Chicago Community Trust and from Comcast, which we're really grateful for. To expand or to do any of this other work, we have to bring in more funding and dedicated funding. And also we're looking for event sponsors. So people that can help us want to have their brand affiliated with this and can help us kind of get the word out and really spread this more broadly. The partner charge, we can share more of this if you're interested in becoming part of an advisory committee member. But basically, when we say partner, it's a very sort of specific but loose charge to help us, have a really high quality user experience for this project, spread the word, develop ideas, and help us identify the best ways to sort of spread the word. This is really a collaborative project. Current is the hub, but again, our partnerships are what power us, and this is really a collaborative effort.
If I may, I'll just add there that at the start of this project, at the very start, we had around 8 or 9 partners. Within several months, that grew to 18, and each partner really contributes at a different level, be it monetarily in kind, through coordination of volunteers, and it's actually grown to 2 additional partners this year. So it's constantly evolving as there are several different components of this project that we need the expertise of others who really focus on those areas in.
Yep. And speaking of expertise of others, you know, we do have a really strong scientific advisory committee. I just always like to flag that. It includes not only our utilities, but utilities around the world, the technology companies. This is what allows a staff of our size to be able to execute on a project of this level of technical complexity. We have all of these people that we're able to call on and do call on frequently, not only to answer specific technical questions about the project, but to help us bridge this work into the real world. So we're really grateful for that. These are some of our prospective partners. As George said, we're always looking for more. And I'm going to flip now to questions because I already see lots of really good ones coming. Thanks, IEC, for bringing us together and giving us a chance to share. IEC, are you guys going to read the, I got a request to put up the QR code again.
Yeah.
So back to that.
Yeah. Yep. I'll go ahead and read the questions. Thank you for that great presentation.
Of course.
And hopefully, I think some of the questions have been answered already in the presentation, but let's see. Jim McCarth asks, if you're monitoring detects unacceptable microbial levels, what are the next steps? Can you determine the source or cause of the high levels?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I'm thinking about some of the interesting, last year as we were kind of testing some of this, yeah, we'd see these funny spikes and trying to identify it. Svetlana, do you want to share more about kind of how that process happens and the close coordination with the utilities and others who are monitoring this as well?
So most, you know, and one example when the levels would be really high is when the CSO occurs. Of course, and we've seen that happen. So that's the next step. You know, MWD is already issuing alerts on that. Friends of Chicago River, they're also alerting people. So you can sign up for those alerts. And when you know a CSO has occurred, then really should not be in touch with water. But what our technology can do is to allow us to see how those levels go down over time and at which point they go back to the typical level. So you can see how long it takes for the water quality to return to normal.
I'll just add a little more to that too. Since there's only that primary contact level of 200 CFUs, there's not really a specific standard to say, okay, it's good to interact with her, it's not. There will always be fecal coliforms in the river. And so theoretically, you can always potentially become ill if you interact or ingest the water. So again, we just want to provide you with that information to make that more informed decision. We want this to be as easy for you to understand and interact with as is the Weather Act. When you wake up in the morning, check it really quickly, then decide how you're going to go about your day. Think that, but with you, oh, I'm going to go kayak in 30 minutes. Let me check H2NOW really quickly, and then make the right decision.
Yep.
Okay.
There was a question about expansion that I just want to address because it's a great one. Like, so if we can do this in the Chicago River, what about other rivers? What about the lake? What about other bodies of water? So absolutely, like there's some core science behind river quality monitoring. And just as we can expand potentially into tracking more different kinds of things in the Chicago River, we could also track some of the same things in other kinds of bodies of water. So we are actively talking with stakeholders that have an interest in other, like many cities are on rivers for obvious reasons. And there's a huge shared interest in cities around the world really in understanding and then improving water quality. So we're actively talking with folks about how we can not only learn from what they're doing, but share what we've learned here. We have a meeting coming up actually next week with the Smart Great Lakes Initiative that's connecting several different projects that are looking at lake water quality monitoring. And so we'll be talking about H2NOW and some of the issues we've encountered and opportunities. And we'll also be hearing from folks in Cleveland, up in Canada. And so Smart Great Lakes Observatory is trying to build to a connected Great Lakes. That's one effort that's worth tracking and finding out about. I think we'll be posting the video. That's an invitation-only capped webinar, but we'll be sharing that out afterwards. So if you're interested, definitely follow up with us there. And yeah, we would love to think about how to do this in other waterways in our region, so including the Calumet, the Des Plaines, and elsewhere in Illinois. The limitations, in addition to sort of funding and personnel and just finding project owners and homes, really have more to do with some of the things Helena talked about in the beginning. You know, you have to understand what kind of waterway. There's all these technical challenges that go into selecting the right probe, you know, the right parameters for testing and calibration. And so it's totally possible. We would just have to understand, you know, what is it for each specific river and each specific waterway. So that's kind of how we think about that.
Thank you. And then I have a question that's kind of like somewhat tied again back to like the water quality. Can you speak to what we know about the difference in water quality between the three branches of the Chicago River?
Definitely. And I'll turn over to Svetlana for more of the detail, but just at a high level, it's been really important for us to measure this because I want to say something about the equity of our region overall and the spatial equity issues in our region. So as many of you know, the river cuts sort of northwest through the middle of the city and then down south. And we want everybody in the city to be able to access the river. The South Branch historically has had a lot more heavy industrial use and less access generally. That's just, you know, it sort of mirrors some of the inequality issues that have happened in the region and in our city over time. I think that's pretty well known. So that's one of the reasons it was really important to us to have probes at all levels and to be engaging communities along all three branches. Some of the reasons that it varies from branch to branch, well, there are numerous reasons. Svetlana, I'll let you kind of speak to what we know about the variation at this point, because there's some really interesting trends.
Sure. So if we're talking about the North Branch, the place we're measuring is downstream of the confluence of the Chicago River and the North Shore Channel. And you're probably aware the North Shore Channel receives effluent from the O'Brien wastewater treatment plant. And in 2015, they implemented UV disinfection at that plant. So that effluent contains acceptable levels, microbial levels right now. So they're within the acceptable range. But we've seen typically higher levels at the place we're measuring. So we can assume that there are higher concentrations in the Chicago River itself. What is the source of microbes? It's a little hard to tell. We've heard that there are possibly some homes where there's still disconnected to the river. But I cannot speculate really whether that's true or not. But what we observed is higher levels in the North Branch. The main stem receives a lot of lake water, especially in the summer because they often open the lock. And so we've seen a pretty low microbial levels there. But during heavy rain events, and especially when CSOs happen, it has been noticed before that the flow may actually go in reverse, and that polluted water can get into the main stem, and sometimes actually the lock has to be opened if there is a risk to flooding to let that water out into the lake. But last summer we actually did not occur last summer, so we have not noticed any particularly high levels. So the main branch was relatively clean, and the South Branch is a mix of the main branch and what comes from the North Branch, plus the channel is a lot wider, so the flow is not as strong, and typically we see lower microbial concentration levels than on the North Branch.
Yeah.
And to remind everyone, the river flows north to south with that influx from the main stem, otherwise pushing that kind of static section, if you will, further south. And just to remind everyone, fecal coliforms are derived from warm-blooded animal feces. So anytime you see dog poop on your lawn, or rats, seagulls, pigeons, they can all contribute whenever it rains and it just washes it into the sewer and into the river. So just more reason to pick up after your animals and just and encourage others to do the same as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a question about picking up the effects like the Crawford plant demolition, which was really huge environmental sort of disaster for communities around it. We're definitely picking up, we pick up turbidity increases. I mean, that's something that the sensors are measuring. So yes, and this leads into, I think this leads into where I would like to close. I think I've gotten to most of the questions, and if not, absolutely continue to answer them offline. We'll take questions anytime. But, and I'm going to put up our email addresses real quick. But I want to close on this virus question, which is of real interest to a lot of folks right now. I think the issue with the coronavirus detection efforts right now is people are trying to figure out whether or not it would matter that you can pick it up in the wastewater. Because right now, even if you can do it, but what does it tell you? It tells you that somebody in your system maybe had it. We also know that coronavirus does not do well in the warm temperatures and does not really survive wastewater treatment. So by the time you're getting, this wastewater that we'd be testing, it already would have been treated for most of it. So as an early warning indicator, it's not really going to be useful. So I think the people that are thinking about whether or not you can do it are also sort of asking, well, just because you can, what does it actually tell you that would be meaningful from a public health perspective? Would it give you anything actionable? And that's a lot of what we're asking too. Anytime we're going to put an effort into something, we want to know not only could you do it, but what would happen and what would be different about the world we live in if you are able to overcome that technical challenge. And right now we're not sure that there's actually anything meaningful that we're able to do. And so we're trying to assess that. We're trying to understand, like, would this lead to actionable information? Would this lead to something that would, improve our state's response and prevention efforts down the line? And the reality is we don't know that yet. So that's.
Can I just say one last thing, Lana? We want to reiterate what MWRD is now declaring. Please avoid public waterways for the time being as they continue to measure and understand how COVID-19 affects the waterway and you potentially interacting with it. So until more information is known, please do not kayak on the river or the lake and just keep your distance.
Yeah, and like everybody else, it's a great point, George, because we always, we defer to the people who have the jurisdiction over that waterway, just as we're all deferring to sort of, the state CDC guidelines about how we kind of, learn more about this crisis and how we manage ourselves. So yeah, so I think we're at time. I really appreciate all the great questions and engagement. And our whole team is just really grateful to be able to share this project. We're excited about it, and we are excited to get back out in the field whenever it's safe for us to do that and to really work on the visualization and all the other work that we can do in the meantime. So thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
For your work.
So thank you, Elena, Svetlana, and George, for presenting. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I hope that it was informative and that you guys really got something from it. And again, consider joining IEC or becoming a member. And also just continue to watch our Lunch and Learn series. Tomorrow we'll have Investing in Clean Energy presented by Angela Morehouse from the Illinois Department of Resources, Illinois Department of Natural Resources. So thank you again for everybody for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your evening and come back tomorrow to join us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Ayana.
Thanks.